Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. Hopefully you've all had a great weekend. Today we're going to be diving into our daily cryptocurrency market update, and we're really going to be setting you up for the week to come. Also looking at where we currently are, where I certainly believe we are in regards to the cryptocurrency market and where it's potentially going. And going over a few things, really just preparing you for some of the price action we may get in the coming weeks. And I get a lot of comments, people saying they really like the videos where we went over fundamentals and a lot of what individual cryptocurrency projects are doing. Now, the reason we focus so much on price recently has a lot to do with the fact that this market is not moving off of fundamentals. It's not moving off, on-chain analytics. It's really moving off the macro backdrop. And that's something that, we can start getting, and don't get me wrong, fundamentals and a cryptocurrency actually being worth its salt is always something that you need to consider. We're seeing a lot of projects fold under the current market conditions. And, there are projects out there that have real use cases, real utility, and are real cryptocurrencies and not just smoke and mirrors. And they're the ones that we're looking to accumulate when this market comes lower. Our overall bias, and you guys know, and we've been talking about this for a while now, is we've been bringing this long-term regression bands up at the start of every video, really to reiterate just where we are and the fact that, look, I still think at least you're coming down to the lower band here. You may get some sort of bounce here in probably what I would consider a bullish case. You've also got your 200 moving average on the weekly. There's a number of other key indicators that suggest this, if we're looking for a bottom, and by the way, I actually do see scope for more downside here, but this wouldn't be a particularly bad area to start dollar cost averaging. But ultimately, the price at the moment hasn't got a lot to do with fundamentals, more the macro situation, which is why we've really dedicated these cryptocurrency market updates to, looking at that and trying to navigate and maintain the ship and not capsize in these waters. It's a very survival driven market at the moment, and survival really is the new winning in the cryptocurrency space. And I'm seeing so many coins just absolutely crumble under these market conditions, and we want to try and avoid people from that happening and really give a honest expectation for price moving forwards. And that's what we've been trying to do, and we've still very much maintaining our bias that this market sees more downside. However, one thing that we have been talking about is upside before we get that downside. So right now, what I'm doing really, and we post up things regularly. This was a tweet that we put up earlier saying biasing to the upside today, but we'll trade both the ranges. This is a range, very range driven. Certainly over the weekend has been completely range driven market. And ultimately I will intraday trade that, but look for a big swing trade. And when I say that I intraday trade, it's with a very small amount of capital. There's no big money getting put on the table here, simply because we've had such an exhaustion to the downside. And ultimately, I do believe that we are going to get some sort of a rally. The stock market and how it closed on Friday actually makes me think that the stock market could also see a rally before we get further downside. And we've also spoke about coming back into this accumulation zone and potentially looking at what was prior support as now resistance, a typical support and resistance flip. So we're going to talk about that to start the video off. We'll be looking at a few other things as well, guys. Sunday session really to kind of prepare you for what may come in the next week. And right now, no shorts on the table. Intraday, we're actually currently long, but we'll change that accordingly as sort of new data presents itself. But I can see scope for upside. And if you look at how we've kind of, every time we've come below this line, I mean, here's a good example. You can see you come sort of back to it. I'm not suggesting that we come back all the way up here to your sort of 39, 38K range. Absolutely possible. But I do think if you look at every time that we have a kind of exhaustion of the sell pressure, you do get a return move. And it could be something similar to what we saw in 2018 over here, where exhaustion of the sell pressure, you get an up move, and then you continue the downtrend to the lower band. That's what I'm essentially looking at, guys. Same thing over here, exhaustion, big wick, move to the upside, and you can see this was actually quite an explosive move to the upside, guys, before we get that continuation to the downside. Or in this case, we start the journey to the downside. And I think the macro landscape really what's the word, supports that. In regards to what we're currently looking at, I'll take this off for the time being. Where do I think that we're actually going to end up? And today, guys, you do have the futures for the stock market opening, or the S&P, I should say. Watch that, because that will kind of maybe set the tone. And right now, it's what everybody else is watching, which is why your markets are moving in this kind of a manner. For me, this is somewhat exhaustion. We're failing and we're sort of hovering around the 30K range. We're sort of going in and out of it. It's a very, very trader-driven market. Whilst we're on the weekly, actually, you know, if you look at your indicators, and I think that the likes of your RSI and your stock RSI and your MACD and stuff like that have a lesser degree of somewhat accuracy. We've got to remember these models, essentially, these indicators were meant for traditional stock market, not the cryptocurrency market. But if you look at where we are very oversold. Now, in a downtrending market, you're going to spend more time oversold than you are overbought. Just like in a bull market, it's vice versa. So just because you're oversold doesn't mean that you're due or you're owed any kind of a pullback. But one thing that I do look at is, certainly when we look at a long-term time frame here, is where we are. You know, we're a very, very oversold point. And typically you do get some kind of a bounce here or roundabout here. And I think that that could come. But ultimately, we're looking for downward continuation. Stock RSI is very similarly in a similarly position. And ultimately, you know, I am looking for me to get confidently short. I want to see a setup. I don't just want to short this market and go, okay, well, eventually it will come down. You know, I want to look for good entries so that I don't have to, you know, certainly with any sort of significant volume of money, see that dwindle over the course of the trade. So right now, really what I'm looking for is a swing trade. We will intraday trade. It's just what I do. I actually enjoy trading, so I don't mind doing this. But I would like to see, you know, this as an exhaustion and a push up. Now, where do we push up to? Well, we've spoken about this accumulation range, which we've got in the green box here, that was prior accumulation. You've bounced off a significant level that we had set out way before you had even got down here. We'd got this level, just like we've got the 63, 64K range, and of course down here, due to some prior accumulation that had taken place and areas where you've seen volume previously. You bounced off this level, having run a low. You've now come back into it. And what I would like to see, and if we look at our volume by price indicator over here, you can see where that you have a lot of volume. It also perfectly aligns with where you bounced previously. So my thinking in regards to this market is that from here, and we don't have to go straight up, we see some sort of a journey, and this has always been on the cards, back to at least 32K, possibly coming into this range, deviate, and then we get that continuation to the downside. That's optimal for me to see. And we will be shorting that. And of course, there's invalidation points for where we close the shorts, given the fact that, you know, you don't want to be shorting something that's, you know, you don't want to be early on your short because it's going to suck to hold. Certainly with any kind of leverage, you risk getting liquidated. But this is what we're looking at. And in regards to an intraday time frame, and we'll drop down to the hourly, you know, you can see. Follow me on Twitter, guys, because we give you free alpha all the time. You know, I'm unlike the vast majority of people commenting on this space. We are active day traders. It's not something that, you know, if I've got the time to do it, I will. I don't recommend being a day trader because it is actually quite a it's a full-on job in regards to the fact that you really have to watch the market and look for the ranges that are being played. But we said here, look, you're biasing to the upside, guys. The upsides come, target one's hit, so we've taken half off. We'll take another half off here, and then we'll reassess the trade. So today we're in the money, but we'd have traded it to the downside. If this had deviated from this mid-range, our longer mid-range, then we'd have shorted this, etc., etc. In actual fact, you know, certainly if you look at these, we'll drop down to the 5-minute. You know, you can see it's just textbooks range trading markets right now. But ultimately, you know, we want to see that push higher, going back to a broader time frame here, and I'll get rid of the RSI and the stock. Going back to a broader time frame, I want to see some sort of move. For me to get confidently short after an exhaustion of the trend, further upside is what I'm really wanting to see. Now, that doesn't actually have to be the case. And in actual fact, given the market conditions, you know, we could actually just this could be the consolidation before downside. So we're also prepared for that situation as well. But this week, I can definitely see the scope for upside. And we mentioned we'll get the, we'll actually look not at the futures, but we'll look at the S&P. Friday was a nightmare because we got this candle, market sold off, and then the ES basically got bid up. And it's very common when you run a low that the ES and your equities are very good at double bottoming. You know, even if it's in a marginal sense. And certainly when they run prior lows, you can see that they often get a bounce. You can see the double bottoming that I'm talking about. So this is why when we're looking at the S&P, I could see this, and I think that markets should be due, at least until we get what goes on in June with the Fed, some sort of a move to the upside, which is why I'm very cautious. I mean, I'm cautious trading both ways because on the long side, you've just got to think that this is a downtrending market. Don't bet against the trend. That's not a trivial saying. It's an actual very true and factual saying. And if you look at where your ES currently is, you start to see the stock market rally. The dollar, by the way, I think is going to be supportive of a rally. It's pulled back. It's gone on and ran a high, and it's pulling back from that. I mean, the dollar, how many people did you see on Twitter? And we were actually battling with some of them saying, look, you don't, if you're calling for the DXY based on just you think it looks over bought and you're not taking into account the kind of basket that makes up the DXY, then you don't really know what you're talking about and shouldn't be talking about the subjects at all. But ultimately, I can see this taking a rest. Your commodities are somewhat taking a rest. There's a number of other things. Bitcoin dominance we'll have a quick look at. We had drawn this, by the way, this Bitcoin market dominance, and said, look, it's likely to break. This goes higher, I think, and that could push money into Bitcoin. That's ultimately going to push money into altcoins. But my point on the ES is I could see a rally. If the futures, which we're going to get later on today, and we'll certainly talk about how it's opened or not opened in tomorrow's video, if the futures opens up and then we get more of that into tomorrow, you know, that's kind of setting the market up for the rally that it needs. And that really ties in, certainly in regards to Bitcoin, with the overall thesis that we've got that this market is going to go higher before it goes lower. It doesn't have to happen. This could be the consolidation, but ultimately what I want to see is some sort of a push up before we get a rejection. I think this is a key level, by the way, guys, where you've got this volume by price indicator around about your 32, 33K range. 33K would be a nice short for me. That's where I'd probably start adding shorts and look to maybe cut my shorts at a higher point. But in this is where I'm going to be shorting. This is ideal for me. Why are we shorting? Well, we want to make money off the market when it goes up and down. Ultimately, I'm an investor in the cryptocurrency market as I think it's going to be the hottest investment space over the next 5 years. And we still are invested in crypto, but we will also try and trade markets and navigate them as best as possible. But this is why I want to short this range here to get that downside, you know, and start taking out some of these levels and coming back to the lower bands of the long-term regression bands, and also, you know, where we may find other support. And that for Bitcoin is going to be a good short, but altcoins is going to potentially be an amazing short. You know, we are looking at shorts for altcoins at the moment, but I'd like to see, and here's the thing with altcoin, we'll just use Rune as an example. Big wick, come up, big wick, double bottom, and then you get that rally. Wick, W double bottom, rally, Bitcoin drives this, and then we get that further downside continuation. And when you're looking at altcoins, go and look at the Wall Street cheat sheet, apply them to your altcoins. I still think you've got downside to come. You know, we are in a macro bull market for the cryptocurrency space, and there's no getting around that. But right now, the powers that be, and what I mean by that is March 2020 saw huge did see huge liquidations actually, but it saw huge liquidity pumped into markets. We're now seeing liquidity get drained from markets, and actually a reduction in that from a number of aspects, whether that be the Fed funds rate or the reduction of the balance sheet that hasn't yet started. You've also got to think that Europe hasn't even started interest rate hikes yet. European Central Bank, ECB, members say to expect first rate hikes this summer. More reduction for markets. Right now, the US is leading the charge, but this is going to be echoed elsewhere, as it kind of has to be. Germany at the moment is You know, it's been a fascinating couple of years for me because I've really become somewhat of a macro economist, and I've certainly spoken, I'm in talks constantly with people who have been following the macro for, you know, as long as I've been alive, and it's fascinating because it's part of the crypto story just as much as it's part of anything. So to reiterate, guys, very quickly before I love and leave you, we're still looking for further downside on a swing trade basis. We are looking for upward continuation before we get the overall trend to the downside. And I think here, round about the where you bounced previously, may act as a somewhat of a wall, but we'll see how we get there. We'll see what transpires when we get to those zones. So that's all I've got for you in this video, guys. Of course, if you've enjoyed this content, a like is always appreciated, so as a comment. Make sure you go and follow me on Twitter, guys, because we're dropping informative stuff, you know, what our thoughts are. This was a great I felt like this was a great meme or whatever you call it, GIF. Surviving is the new winning, absolutely, certainly in these markets. But we will keep you up to date on everything. That's really all I've got for you guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Market's in green today. You know, don't aggressively longing this market, I think, is foolish. If you want to take a small little bit of money in intraday trade, whatever. But ultimately, you know, the majority of your investors, and that's exactly what you should be. And there's going to be some amazing investment opportunities presenting themselves very soon, or in the sort of short term to mid-term time horizon. Once we start getting into some accumulation zones, which we'll talk about, and a number of altcoins, you know, we've got lists and lists of altcoins that we want to accumulate. And of course, we are going to be talking about that in the Discord group, the membership group that we are setting up. So that's all I've got for you in this video, guys. If you enjoyed the content, like us, always appreciate it. So as a comment, and I'll catch you in the next YouTube video. Thanks a lot for watching, ladies and gents.